Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. At today's seminar, I would like to welcome Anna Rogers. Anna Rogers is from the IT University in Copenhagen. She's working in large language models, which will be the topic of today's talk. She worked at various places in the world. She holds a PhD from University of Tokyo and was a postdoc at very different places like University of Massachusetts and also, of course, University of Copenhagen. She's also, I mean, you might see her for the first time, but I'm sure she knows all of you in a way, because also she's one of the editors-in-chief of the ACL Rolling Review. I think you will have the opportunity to know her if there is anything on that front. So I would like to. I mean, one of the reasons why she is here is that she gave a similar talk at the winter school we had in Norway in February, and I thought it's a very interesting talk for everybody or anybody who is working with large language models from various perspectives. So that's why we have invited Anna to give a seminar here, because not everybody from you was actually in Skykamp in Norway. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for being here, and thank Jan for inviting me. This is such an amazing place. This is about large language models and factuality. And I have something of a personal skin in this game, because I led the first ChatGPT policy development at ACL 2023, when basically a couple of months after ChatGPT hit the world, and it suddenly became okay to use it for writing scientific papers. We had to very quickly come up with a policy about that, and then I just kept thinking about what it means for us in our quest for factually accurate information. And yes, that's roughly my trajectory of how I got to Denmark in the longest possible way around the world. Okay, so what is factuality is the first thing we will discuss. What does it mean to treat LLMs as information sources? What are the proposed solutions to the factuality problems that they have, specifically the retrieval-augmented generation and chain of thought prompting? And what do LLMs mean for our information ecosphere as of this day? That's the plan. Okay, before we go any further, what do we even mean by factuality? Here's what I mean. And that's the definition of Henry Frankfurt, a philosopher. So he says that what makes facts facts is that they are what they are, irrespective of what we want them to be. So this is the defining feature of factuality, something that is objectively true, irrespective of how we feel about it. And he says that this is important because if we don't have a good grasp on the factuality, then we're basically moving blind through the world. We're like an untrained robot that bumps into everything it sees. We do not have a map, a source of information that we can use to navigate the world better. That's why he says factuality is important. And I guess we are seeing a live test of what it means to do global politics without that notion underlying the decision-making live. Now, what is the opposite of factuality? Frankfurt is kind of famous for this essay on bullshit. And this is the distinction that he makes in that essay. So he makes a distinction between lying and bullshit. And this is what he says. Someone who lies and someone who tells the truth are playing on the opposite sides in the same game. Whereas the bullshitter, they do not just reject the authority of truth and oppose themselves to it. He just pays no attention to it at all. By virtue of this, bullshit is a greater enemy of truth than lies are. So lies are the denial of truth, but you do know what the truth is, whereas bullshit is something that is just completely orthogonal to any notion of factuality. It may or may not happen to be factually correct, but the defining feature is that it is not produced based on the notion of truth. So what are the examples of bullshit that we had before ChatGPT in our daily lives as humans? Where might we encounter bullshit? Yep. That is actually one of Frankfurt's examples, yes. Anything else? Mm-hmm. Politics, yes, another Frankfurt example. This is really the examples that he used himself. So yes, marketing, politicians, and yes, students in the exam for which they are not prepared. But basically, he says that we are likely to encounter bullshit in a situation in which somebody is incentivized to say something about text and they do not know enough about text. So another example could be experts that are invited to speak on TV about some matter. So, okay, what does it mean for LLMs as information sources? We know that LLMs make things up. So this was soon after ChatGPT came up. It immediately invented a sexual harassment, naming a real law professor as the accused, and the professor, being a law professor, immediately filed a lawsuit. So that happened pretty much at once. We also know that LLMs actually try to make up for making things up. So I asked ChatGPT early on which British politicians have been accused of sexual harassment. And it said that as of January 2023, there weren't any specific details about any British politicians accused of anything improper, which is definitely not true. But to basically cover the basis after the first incident, this became the strategy. The problem is very much not solved. So this is just a few weeks ago, a Norwegian man filed another lawsuit against OpenAI because ChatGPT provided that piece of background information about that man, that he's known for killing his own children. So, okay, that has been the problem, and it is still a problem. We also know that LLMs are making up sources. This became famous after two lawyers relied on ChatGPT information in their legal brief, and then it turned out that none of those cases even existed. Okay, so where does this put us with respect to the bullshit theory? So there's a paper by these three philosophers, which is titled ChatGPT is bullshit. And they make the case that this is the term that is the most technically applicable to what is going on. So the problem is not that large language models hallucinate, lie, or misrepresent the world. It's that they are not designed to represent the world at all. They are designed to convey convincing lines of text. That's what we train them to do. So any output is not grounded in any version of factuality, which is the defining feature of bullshit. So, but they go a bit further. Okay, so the Frankfurt notion of bullshit is, okay, something that is orthogonal to the truth of the utterance. But then they make the distinction between hard bullshit, where you produce some text with the intention to mislead about your agenda. So you produce bullshit, but you present yourself as if you're not. And then soft bullshit is bullshit that is produced without such an intention. So I may produce text that is orthogonal to factuality, but I may not hide that fact. Okay, so where does this put us? What do you think? Is ChatGPT a case of ChatGPT or other such services? Do we get soft or hard bullshit out of them? So you can join this session at menti.com using this code and say what your take is. Okay. I hope we can get a discussion after that. But it seems like the majority is going for the soft bullshit in this audience. Okay. So what do philosophers themselves say? They hedge their bets. They qualify. They say that it definitely qualifies for soft bullshit, and that's the very legal minimum that is applicable. So if we say that the difference between soft and hard bullshit is the intention to mislead, because ChatGPT doesn't have any intentions, then it cannot have the intention to mislead. But nevertheless, it is producing bullshit, and so at the very least, it's the soft one. But in this case, we can say that it's a bullshit machine. It's not itself the bullshitter, it's the bullshit machine, and the bullshitter is whoever is using it. Given that they, A, don't care about the truth, and B, want the reader to believe otherwise. And actually, remember this case where two lawyers cited a made-up case? Actually, the judge agreed that they acted in bad faith. So they actually ruled and sanctioned the lawyers. They said that this was a deliberate act of deception. Now, they do say that there is also a case to be made that actually ChatGPT is producing hard bullshit. And the rationale here is basically the imitation game. We are training these models to produce convincing lines of text. So like we are designing them to sound as if they are something that they are not. And if you take that line of reasoning, then you could argue that what we are seeing is actually hard bullshit. Because basically it is not designed to disclose what it is. Okay, so given all this, where does this put us with respect to using LLMs as information sources? Which is definitely being heavily marketed. So you go to pretty much any search engine and they will now offer you a helpful assistant, which is presented as a new way to access information. So this is from you.com. And this is from Perplexity, perplexity.ai. If you know the service, it's supposed to be an alternative to search engines and Wikipedia, kind of presenting you a research summary all over the web. They specifically say that it's a Swiss Army knife for information discovery. So strictly marketed as information access tool. If you try to look for the disclaimer, this is the Perplexity interface. This is where you have to go for terms of service. So there's no disclaimer here anywhere, but there is terms of service. If you try to find the terms of service and if you go through them, this is what it says. The company entities disclaim all responsibility and liability for the completeness, accuracy, availability, timeliness, security, or reliability of the services. And also whether the services will meet your requirements or be available on uninterrupted, secure, or error-free basis. So this is an information access tool with this disclaimer. So where does this put us with respect to soft and hard BS? So whatever we, okay, sorry, I don't have that slide. Whatever we say with respect to the model itself, what about the people who sell it as information access tool, knowing how it works? Let's just do a show of hands. Who believes that qualifies for soft bullshit? Who believes it qualifies for hard bullshit? Okay, that's pretty unanimous. Okay, now, of course, you have heard the term hallucination before, and that's what is usually what people usually say when they talk about factuality problems rather than bullshit. So which is a better term? Actually, these philosophers, they discuss that, and they say that we shouldn't use the term hallucination because the implication is that this is something abnormal. In humans, when we hallucinate, it's because something happened to us. Whereas the models are just acting as designed. And also, yeah, so they do not perceive, so they cannot misperceive, and it's nothing unusual for the models. And most importantly, because we say that it's hallucination, and hallucination has this implication of something that is abnormal, then the implication is that this is a temporary bug that will be fixed. Like surely in a couple of more iterations, the models will be free of hallucinations. That's the implication. And that is quite questionable at this point. So what about the proposed solutions? The first one that we have right now is the retrieval-augmented generation, which I'm sure you all have heard about. The basic idea is that you do not just retrieve the knowledge from parametric memory, you instead have some kind of database, and you vectorize your whatever information you want, and then you try to retrieve what you want the model answer to be based on. You give it back to the model, and the model is trying to mix and match and produce the output given on this information you have in the context. And there's lots and lots of variations on this already. There's libraries that implement that. There's tricks such as giving the model more context instead of just the specific chunk. There's different things that people do with transforming queries so that you are slightly more likely to get what you wanted. Now, can this in principle solve the bullshit problem? Let's see what people think. In principle, can this solve the bullshit problem? Okay. Now, a lot of you said in specific contexts. Pretty much nobody is unanimously positive. But okay, if you said in specific contexts, and a lot of you did, what did you mean? In what cases can it actually solve the factuality problem? Mm-hmm.
Very limited domain where the retrieval is kind of easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much sure to retrieve relevant information. And you can kind of check that in most cases actually works, then you can probably leave it to.
Right. So if retrieval problem is very simple, and if you can check easily. Okay, any other takes? Okay, that's a good take. Any other ideas? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So I guess going back to your idea of being easy to check, if it is not easy to check, then we're not actually saving any time or effort. Okay. Now, this is actually again discussed by our philosopher friends. They consider the case, what happens if you provide this language model with some kind of database? They say that LLMs are not designed to represent the world at all. They are designed to convey convincing lines of text. So when they are provided with a database of some sort, they use this in one way or another to make their responses more convincing. But they're still, in any real way, are not attempting to convey or transmit the information in the database. So because there still is not this notion of actual truth that is guaranteed to underlie the production, we are not closer to the target than when we started. So this is from a recent report of ChatGPT and Perplexity and Gemini. They try to see how well they are able to attribute facts to the news articles from which those articles were sourced. So green means that it worked okay, and red and purple is completely or partially incorrect. So as you can see, for ChatGPT, it's most like 60% incorrect. For Perplexity, less so, but still a large chunk is incorrect. Copilot is particularly sad, and so is Gemini, which is ironic. And also, so this is just this part of the chart. And these are the sources to which, according to the chatbots and the deals that were made with the publishers, the models actually had access. Now, these are the sources to which the models were not supposed to have access. And they still, in many cases, provided correct answers, and also, in most cases, did not attribute it correctly. So what this means is that, at least for news, the retrieval-augmented generation is not solving the factuality problem. And actually, they say that, surprisingly, the pro versions of those chatbots did even worse than the free versions. So one thing that could happen is that you have a text that says A is not B, and then you get the citation that says otherwise. So negation has long been a problem in NLP, but it's still a problem. Another problem that could happen is that because of those query transformations or because of information availability, you could actually lead the model astray. So in this case, I asked ChatGPT, how popular is Danish food? It was before it got RAG. And it said, okay, not very famous, but okay, there's Ebreskiva, there's pastries, there's good stuff. Okay, at least it's answering the question. Now, the same question posed to Copilot, Bing AI at that point, came with references. But basically what happened was that instead of answering my question, it said, okay, Danish cuisine is based on what could easily be farmed, etc. It's talking about what food is popular in Denmark. And that's probably either because the way that my query got perverted, and because of the documents to which it had access, because probably there's not a lot of documents that say Danish food is not super popular. So that's another problem that could happen. Another thing, going back to the point about a limited domain and easy verification. So this is from a master thesis that we had at ITU last year. We tried to just constrain LLMs with a database that had information about gene disease associations. So very limited, right? One of the things that we did was to just see whether the model will be constrained to not make things up when the answer is not in the knowledge graph. And 5 to 8% of the cases we found we still got correct answers or incorrect answers, even when there was no evidence in the graph. So unfortunately, that is also not bulletproof. One more issue is, okay, how the hell do we even evaluate retrieval-augmented generation? There's accuracy and relevance, that's one criterion, but then there's relevance to query, that's the example with Danish food I showed you, faithfulness to the sources, and these are all orthogonal, correctness versus some ground truth that you have elsewhere, like all these are different. Also, you could look at system latency, diversity of responses, some kind of fairness, robustness to noise in the input, rejecting the response when there's not enough information, robustness to biases and incorrect information, readability. Plus, you get all the usual problems with just evaluating unstructured text. So we are in the very, very early days. It's not even clear what of this to look at and in what combination and how to properly measure any of this. Especially without just having turtles all the way down and relying on LLMs as judges for each step. And then one more thing here is, what are the trusted sources? So with database with gene disease associations, that's relatively uncontroversial, but okay, let's say ChatGPT partnered, OpenAI partnered with Axel Springer, including Politica, Business Insider, Build, and Welt. Is anybody familiar with Build? Okay, what kind of source is that? It's a tabloid. So it was a tabloid before that announcement, and after that, this happened. So even the tabloid is cut 20% of its workforce in response to AI revolution. So even when there are some deals with publishers, we are in no way guaranteed that these are the publishers we'd actually want to see. One more item in this bright new world is the search optimization for AI. So this is a professor who decided to test how well this would work, and he added in white text on his webpage that he won 3 Pulitzer Prizes and wrote a bunch of culinary books. And then this is what AI summary of him was. This I saw just a couple of days ago. Apparently, people are already being scared into worrying about what ChatGPT will say about them. So, okay, this was retrieval-augmented generation. The other proposed approach to improving factuality was chain of thought prompting. I guess you mostly know how that works. You try to give the model some kind of template or example of how it should reason about the problem. And the idea is that it would then try to generate such an explanation, and that explanation would by itself improve its accuracy. So that's the example from the original paper on chain of thought prompting. That's the kind of evidence that they gave for how this works. With chain of thought prompting on some of the tasks, you will see performance improvement. So they tested 5 mathematical, 5 common sense, and 2 destroy logical tasks. There's no justification for how the models or benchmarks were selected. And what they say is that, okay, this mostly works better than standard prompting. And then it was sold as a key feature of the OpenAI Strawberry models. So they said on the page that we believe that using a chain of thought offers significant advances for safety and alignment, because it enables us to observe the model thinking in a legible way. So it's not just accuracy, it's also transparency. We can see what the model is doing. So how well does it actually work? So I'll just give you results from this study. Language models don't always say what they think, unfaithful explanations, and chain of thought prompting. The TLDR is that it only works to the extent that those explanations are faithful, and we do not necessarily know that this is the case. So on average, in their testing, there was an accuracy boost, but they found that on some tasks, actually, this makes things worse. The few short chain of thought prompting decreased sensitivity to bias, but again, this varied a lot by bias and model. But in bias scenarios, it actually hurt the performance. So if you just tell the model to do the reasoning and give it a bias scenario, then it will actually follow the bias. Here's how they did it. So in this example, they injected in the text either one version or another version of the weak evidence. In this case, this is, of course, a US example. The white woman and the black man are doing something suspicious. And then what they see is that basically the model is following the social stereotype and making things up to make it look coherent, but it actually follows not the evidence, but its own stereotype. Another thing here is that chain of thought prompting can actually be a jailbreak. So many of the commercial models have been aligned to reject certain queries. In this paper, they found that if you ask to think step by step, then you will get a recipe for the bomb and anything else that you want. So just before we go further, what do you think? Does this solve our factuality problem or not? All right. So the brave people who say in specific contexts, what did you mean? Anybody? In what context, in what kind of context would chain of thought be sufficient to ensure factuality? Yeah. Right. But is the problem that there's too many possible traces, or that the traces that are being output do not necessarily represent what the model did? Right. Right. So even if we can enumerate them all and make it look logical and coherent, that's actually not the problem. It's actually the problem that it can look logical and coherent no matter what the model did. Okay, fair. Okay, but we now come to the depressing part of this lecture, which is what is already happening to the information ecosphere. So that is not my image, that is from this article, but I think it accurately describes the current state of affairs. The moment ChatGPT came out, that was immediately to be expected, right? Like in no world was this not going to happen. And I guess also in no world this was not going to happen. The bot town on social media. So both of these cases are rather to be expected. But that's actually not the worst. So one industry about which I didn't know, it's called obituary pirates. So it's basically people who monitor when there's a spike in search terms that involve somebody's name and location. Usually this means that something happened and people are trying to find with search what happened. So to monetize on that, they quickly put up a piece of content that looks like it answers that question, and they capture the traffic and drive people away from real sources of what actually happened. In this case, the journalist found out that something happened to her. So it doesn't have to be actually anything that really happened. You can also, I guess, manufacture such a spike by starting a rumor that something happened, and then out of nothing you get profit. This is an actual service that many sites now provide. And the service is that you get versions, up to 1,000 versions of some article in 3 easy steps. So you can take some text and get a lot of slightly different copies of that text. Now, who would want that and why? Yeah. Search engine optimization, but why would you post 1,000 copies? All linking to the same source. Marketing politicians, well, so they want to create the impression that there's a campaign where everybody is posting versions of some supportive message, grassroots, maybe. But there's an even, yeah.
Influencing the LLMs by changing the training data. The future LLMs.
That's interesting. Yeah, but there's also a different use case, which is, let's say you are a pretend resource that you want to pretend that you are like a real news website, or maybe you even operate a dozen of them. So what you need some content to put on your website, but you don't want to actually do any journalism. So you take some articles from some reputable source, and you create fake versions of that, and you post it on all of your resources, and then it looks like you have a real news business, even though you basically stole the content. This guy actually boasted on Twitter about SEO heist. So they took a sitemap, and in the sitemap, in the URLs, you can often get keywords for what is in the articles. So just using that, they using those keywords generated some content for our pages and put up a fake copy of that website. and stole all the traffic from the original popular website. So if any of you have been looking at your search results day by day and thinking, this is getting worse, maybe this is why. Another new phenomenon is AI zombies. So what happens is, in this case, Apple blog used to be a popular old blog, but then the domain expired and it went down. So then somebody bought that domain and is now filling it up with LLM content. But it still has high reputation from the old days, and so gets ranked high. If you think that this is only search, think again. So this is a real book by Melanie Mitchell, a Santa Fe professor, and that is not it. But it is being sold on Amazon, and she cannot do anything about it. So like, she complained to Amazon, and Amazon actually to mitigate the influx of LLM content, they now have a rule that authors can publish a maximum of 3 books a day. Which is definitely helping. So yeah, like even when you buy books now, check what you're getting. And this actually started even before ChatGPT. So CNET used to be a reputable, relatively resource. They were quietly publishing some generated articles even before ChatGPT came out. And they did not disclose it in the articles. So I'm going to talk about one specific case. When people say fake news, they mean misinformation. But here the head is sites, so it's actually fake sites that are pretending to be news. And I need a better name for this. This is what it looks like. That's a screenshot that I made myself from a site that was called at that point World Today News. It is no longer up, but this is what it would look like. Some text and some images and the layout that looks like it's a real news website and a generic name. So there's a organization, a company that basically as a service provides a list of such websites that they manually identified with a team of journalists. And that's the only tracker that I know of. According to them, there's currently 1,254 such websites in 16 languages. And their criteria are rather strict, so it has to be like completely obvious that no human editing was ever involved. So the real number is probably a lot more. And they will be published under generic names such as Daily Time Update. And the reason why people are doing this is mostly to serve algorithmic ads. But some also are part of propaganda efforts. So NewsGuard says that they found 167 websites that are part of campaign with misinformation about Ukraine. So not mostly for ads, but also propaganda. So I'll tell you about just one study that we did last year, considering the problem of how feasible it is to detect this kind of content in the wild. So there's, of course, lots of papers on detecting synthetic text, but they usually assume that you already have a nice and clean data set. And in the wild, what we have when we see a website is we have no idea. So we need to somehow be able to take the text and run some kind of detection on it. So we tried to do this study on Italian because most people who did the actual work are Italian. Okay, so basically to do this, we used an older, mostly English first-generation Llama, 7B version and 65 billion version. We only used 40,000 Italian texts for fine-tuning. Llama itself is not multilingual, but it has seen Italian Wikipedia, so we assume that this is most of the Italian that it was exposed to. And then this fine-tuning on Italian news texts. We used mostly public guides and training scripts, so fine-tuning is easy. And to do this, you'd need about $100 on Amazon Web Services to replicate everything that we did in the paper. So that's the entry barrier for getting into the business of producing such websites. To see how well the model did, we tested it with native speakers of Italian with this setup. So text B follows text A. Do you think text B is written by a machine or not? And then we take some original news articles and we generate the continuation by the model, and we show people either the original or the generated strings. This is the results, and the human accuracy for the best model is only 64% with 50 being random chance. And again, this is only 40,000 texts on first-generation Llama. So we could presumably do a lot better if we really tried. So how can we detect this? So there's several approaches, and one is something that is based on token probabilities. So you do need full access to the probabilities in the token output. One method is to just look at log likelihoods. Another that is called detect GPT is a slightly fancier version where you try to generate some perturbations of each sentence, and then you measure the likelihood for all of them, and then you normalize. So this should give you a slightly more accurate estimation. So how well does it work? It works better than humans, which should be good news. However, we can't actually do this in the real world. Again, our problem is we have this text from a suspicious website. We want to know if it's a LLM or not. Of course, we do not have access to the token probabilities. And interestingly enough, it actually misses a very clear signal. So for human raters, one of the clear signals that this was a machine text was that the model, for no reason, would just switch to English. So of course, you would not expect this in Italian text, and this was a clear giveaway. But as far as the methods based on token likelihood were concerned, no problem at all. Then we have the supervised detection, and this is the route that OpenAI itself first tried to go. They initially said, okay, here's a classifier for ChatGPT. And this is still the approach that is used in services like GPT-0, so supervised classification. ChatGPT's detector went down in July 2023 due to low rate of accuracy, according to OpenAI. And I think from what we see in this, we saw in our study, we know why. Well, yeah, it doesn't work so well, but because the services are still being provided, we actually have cases where students are being accused of cheating because professors believe the results of GPT-0, because, I mean, this is a service sold for detecting synthetic text. But here's why it doesn't and probably will never work. So we did a very simple test, and we tried to detect whether text is original or machine generated in two settings. One is just the same Italian data set is used for training. And in another setting, this is the second bar in each of these conditions, In this setting, we split the training data, same number of examples, but we took them from 2 different Italian news data sets. So basically, the distribution became more complex, right? One was like crime news, and another was maybe political or something. So the result was that pretty much in all of these settings, the mixed distribution is, of course, more complex, and the accuracy went down. And also, you need at least 4,000 examples for this to work at all. But this is just 2 possible Italian news outlets. Even if the goal was just to model Italian news, how complex is that distribution, and how many outlets would we need to sample to actually have a good representation of all possible human-written Italian news versus everything else? That's just not a well-describable problem for classification. What about if we try to use the token probabilities, but maybe we can use some other model instead of the model to which we do not have access? So what if we can use some other proxy model to see if the token probabilities align? The diagonal in this table says nope. It basically works best when the generating model and the detecting model are the same. So you cannot detect Mistral with Llama or the other way around. Maybe you heard about watermarking. So that's a different approach. The detection methods, they work after the text has been produced. But watermarking, we are doing something during generation to make sure that the text is detectable. There's different versions of how this can be done. One of the popular ones is called red-green watermarking. What you do is you partition your vocabulary into the red list and green list, and you only use the green list for generation. And then, given that you know how the vocabulary was partitioned, you can prove that indeed this is coming from the watermarked model. So that's the idea. And there's this study that says that assuming that you have a decent amount of text and not too much editing, this actually can work. But the problem is that most watermarking techniques, they can be relatively easily removed if you edit enough. Or maybe you can just take the same text and throw it through a translation or paraphrasing tool, and the watermark will be gone. And then, how many models are currently on Hugging Face? Right. So all of that is already available without watermarking. So basically, and given the results that we got with an old Llama, of course, like most of these models will not be great in any scenario, but it is already enough to probably pollute the information ecosphere in most languages already. In most languages for which we have models. What about the API-only models? So at least if you control the model, if you're, example, for OpenAI, then surely you can guarantee that watermark has been preserved, and you can definitely prove that this text is generated. So here's a study by a Swiss team. So they considered this problem of detecting watermarks in the wild, and according to them, there's no statistical evidence of watermarking in GPT-4, Claude 3, and Gemini. So like none of these services, according to this study, is currently doing anything like that. According to Wall Street Journal, OpenAI actually has a watermark that they developed and is effective. But according to this report, they would not deploy it. This is why OpenAI says that they would not do it, because it will stigmatize the second language learners who are using ChatGPT to help them write in English. According to the report, the problem is that there was an internal survey of ChatGPT users, and basically a third of them says that if the use of ChatGPT were detectable, they would not use it, which kind of makes sense. So a lot of the business case is to help people avoid doing the tasks that they don't want to do. So if people could be caught doing that, then the business case would disappear. So that's the current case with detectability of synthetic text. So where does this leave us with respect to content economy, actually? Because apart from our perspective as users, there's also the perspective of everybody who has been creating all the texts on which these models have been trained, and which need to keep producing those texts if we are ever to get more factual content. Of course, if the AI spam is successful, then one problem is that the real sources basically never get users, and so they are driven out by the spam. To address that problem, Google announced that they are revamping their search, and they are doing something to filter out the spammy, low-quality content. According to this Wired report, that didn't really help. Still, the AI spam was ranked above the original news articles in the cases that they checked. Another thing is, so this is a recent report. They say that basically when people use AI search engines, such as Perplexity or ChatGPT, the original sites are getting 96% less traffic, which pretty much is killing them. The RAG services in particular have a complex relation with plagiarism. So this is a study in which Wired tried to see whether Perplexity, which they are blocking from accessing their content, was still able to access it, and it was. And it gave the summary of the quoted article with some almost verbatim content. In an interview, the CEO was refusing to say how they actually define plagiarism. So there's not a clear line how much content they can take without providing any attribution, or making sure that Wired gets something for the content that they put out. So if I get this summary and do not go to Wired, then Wired is losing me as a reader for no reason. O'Reilly is trying to pioneer a model in which basically every time a source of content is used for retrieval-augmented generation, the author should get some kind of royalty, and this usage should be tracked. We'll see how well this goes, but another thing here is that how much is ChatGPT subscription now? They were saying that I think it was like about $20, and it really wasn't covering the usage. But let's say that this model, which is currently not being very economically sustainable and burns a lot of compute, now you also have to actually pay all the content creators for the content that you're using. How much would the subscription price be then? And would you then use that instead of just using regular search? So the economic model is not at all clear. Another problem is that currently a lot of resources that rely on Wikipedia and sites like iFixit, they are being pummeled by chatbots, by the bots that crawl the content, presumably for retrieval-augmented generation. This spikes their traffic so much that these sites are really being strained, but basically the cost of providing this extra bandwidth is outsourced and is not paid for by the RAG company. And we do not currently have the model for how to fix that. And one more factor in all this is the national sustainability. In directions of which nations do we currently have those economic benefits accruing? And which information access tools are our populations getting dependent on? And who gets to build up all this trove of user data? And who can withdraw access to the models or the infrastructure for political pressure? And who basically decides which will be the trusted partnered sources promoted by the chatbots? So all of these are interesting questions for the future sustainability of this business. And I'm running a bit over time, so we can maybe skip to the discussion later. But that's what I had for you. The takeaway is that LLMs are by design orthogonal to factuality, but they are marketed as information access tools. And we do not currently have a solution. Neither retrieval-augmented generation nor chain of thought prompting is such a solution. We do already have the negative consequences in the pollution of information ecosphere and also the content economy around it. And we do not have a solution for detecting the AI spam in the wild. But that while all of this is depressing, this means there's exciting research opportunities. We can definitely work just as citizens to push back against such a marketing and at least tell people we know. We can be more critical in our own uses of LLMs. We can help to educate the general public, your grandmother. And we have to keep thinking about the overall information ecosphere, the content economy, and trying to find solutions. How can we make sure that the open source models that we push out will not be contributing to this pollution uncontrollably? How can we investigate the real world impact of LLMs, not just with propaganda and spam, but also the impact on the real content economy and the real creators? Yes, and what can we do to rethink the whole puzzle with respect to their role and attribution and position in the brave new world? So, and yes, what to do about our digital sovereignty? Thankfully, you are actually in a great place to keep working on that. So thank you, and I hope we have a bit more time for discussion.
Okay, so thank you very much for the talk, and now we still have 20 minutes for discussion. So any questions here or actually on the web?
Thank you for a very interesting talk. So in the beginning of the part about bullshit and that we should be careful about LMs and so on, there was an underlying assumption that if the machines are not intended to take care about the truth, they will produce bullshit. And actually, sometimes some LMs produce true outputs. We can agree on it, but sometimes not. Okay, what about humans? So some humans sometimes tell true. So, but that would mean, according to this logic, that humans are also bullshit machines, and we should educate our grandma and I'm provoking, yes. But is there some like playing the devil's advocate? Like, why do we think it's so much different? That or is it really the amount of lies or bullshits, or aren't we? Well,
Right.
that's the question.
Thank you. So yes, and originally the essay on bullshit was about humans. However, presumably the grandmother during her life has made that discovery for herself. So the new problem about which we do need to educate the population is the scale of it. So when I started doing research into how this spam is getting everywhere, I found a lot of things that I didn't know. Presumably, you also saw something that you didn't know about. So this will change how you interact with the web from this point on, and that needs to happen for a lot more people in the population, because we do not know about the scale of the problem. Well, most people don't, and also most people are explicitly told that AGI is coming, and these machines are definitely reliable information access tools. So that's the problem that we need to focus on.
Another question. Yeah, Andre.
Thanks for the great talk, and thanks for the question. I had a very similar one, exactly how humans fare compared to machines in the trustworthiness. And I think that, of course, you also should educate a grandmother about the bad people. And we are taught to do that regularly, so that whenever the market changes in any way, there was kind of a big revolution of door-to-door sellers who were coming to the grandmothers and selling bullshit for a lot of money. So that's exactly it. Here, I think the psychology is that machines were kind of the reliable tools, and they have changed the way they behave. Like they were calculators, and now the calculators have the soft properties. And while we are used to like assessing humans and their trustworthiness, regardless if they are wearing a suit or not, they like the level of trustworthiness can be worse for the suit wearers. Such instincts are not developed for machines. So I think and this is it is actually our utmost duty of all the researchers in NLP to spread the word, and I've spread the word around the world, and I've been doing that over the last 2 years or 3 in all my talks. So one comment rather than question I wanted to make here is just on Friday, I was giving a talk at Comic-Con, a totally like unrelated venue, of course. And there were not many people because it was Friday early for that event. But there was a couple who clearly didn't know anything about the technology, like kind of lower middle class, I would classify them as such. And I asked them afterwards if they at all understood, because I was telling the story how Transformers stole the AI and how it is all deceiving and things like that. And their main message was that they are afraid. So they are like worried users of the internet. They are probably not entering many things and such. So I think that they probably, I didn't talk to them for a long time, but I think they already had some bad experiences. Probably they have ordered things they didn't want to, and it was maybe their worry is not related to the AI as such. It's related to technology in general. And I think that this is very important, that we try to like to uproot the fear from anybody, because the fear is, of course, the starting position for the people to be easily like moved to wherever you would like to manipulate them. So that's like a very general call for action to all here, and a remark that the fear is it's spreading fear is bad, and we should actively like calm it down.
Yeah.
I'll have questions later.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, one point that is kind of still related about bullshitting humans. Sometimes this argument goes in the direction, okay, since some humans do undesirable thing X, then this means that the undesirable thing X should also be okay for machines, because surely we as engineers cannot expect better of what we are making. However, presumably we as engineers are here because we want to build useful tools, right? Now, if that is the goal, would you really hold what you want to provide to the world to the standard of the student in the exam who doesn't know what they're talking about? Or would you hold that tool to a higher standard because that is actually your goal, to provide something that is better? So yeah, we do hold on that criteria the technology to a higher standard than some humans, but there's good reasons to do that.
Me? Oh, Andre. Okay, another Andre.
I just have maybe like a follow-up on this comment and a question on you. You know, because what you just presented is really scary. So how do we like not scare other people while we educate them? I know it's a like really hard question,
Right.
but if you have any ideas to that, I'd be very happy to hear them.
Right. Well, I guess one way to make it less scary is to make it funny. And while this is scary, I mean, let's remember the Nigerian princess. Right? We are entering an era in which spam is going to be much more sophisticated and personalized, and maybe it will even soon take form of phone calls with cloned voices of people who we know. Like, that is scary, yes. But let's remember the Nigerian princess. This is just the next iteration of that. And that's what we need to adapt to. And as far as generally the content economy, I'm very, very sad in what I see on the web, as it seems to me to be the demise of the public commons as something in which you could just discover something with search and you could rely on it being something that somebody put some thought into. So that seems to be gone, and that is very sad because that's what I grew up with. But I guess what this means is we will have to outsource trust and curation. We will have to, instead of searching, go to the places and people who we trust to provide an answer in some respect. And that requires rewiring because we all develop muscle memory for just searching. But that doesn't seem to be the answer anymore. I remember I tried to find an answer for how often to watch a cacti, which seems to be a thing that you would just search. And this time I got conflicting pieces of advice from the top 3 links that I found. And then I decided that actually I have to go and find something that I would consider a reliable source, because that is no longer a source.
So I have one question too. So you sort of condition this problem on using LLMs as information source. Now, what if we sort of go back and create LLMs which will be sort of true to their name, you know, pun intended. There will be only like content and truth agnostic language models which will only generate text, but they will generate it based on whatever we give them as the fact. So imagine that we have a language model which will never generate anything by itself, but when you give it some knowledge, structure, whatever you want, and they will generate nice language. So first question is it ever possible? I mean, can we generate language without the tool knowing nothing about the world? And the second question is whether it would help, probably because people will still use, you know, this for generating spam.
Right. This is a fascinating question. I have also been trying to think about that. Well, if this was possible, this would, of course, be the perfect RAG. But this relies on the, I guess, possibility to separate syntax and semantics, which I'm not so sure about. Like
might depend on the definition of semantics.
Right. Well, as somebody who grew up with cognitive linguistics, I would say no. But yeah, granted, depends on what you consider syntax and semantics. But yeah, basically that would be the perfectly controllable RAG. But that is definitely not what we have now.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I think the only suggestion that, or the path that we should take is to talk to the economists, because the selling models for everything have to be redesigned so that then the business is led to do things which are better for the unity. So my question is whether are you in touch with any economists and economists of like the content on the internet so that they would be seeking for new models, business models, I mean, that would naturally force us engineers to spend even more effort into making the LLMs reliable and like trying to explicitly represent knowledge and say whether they are within the knowledge or outside of that knowledge. So yeah, right. The economic drive.
Yeah, so apart from the economists, there's actually also the grassroots organizations from all the authors who are suing OpenAI, and some organizations like O'Reilly. Adobe actually also said that they will try to come up with some way to allocate royalties to the training data creators. So like irrespective of me, some of such work is going on. For myself, I have a project for the next 3 years on working on trying to find methods for attributing the generated text to training data. Because any such economy that could be possible relies on having technical means to even do it.
Other questions, comments? Yeah, please.
So is there a method to fine-tune the models for like truth speaking or like outputting truth? Like, or are you aware of something like that?
No, I don't think there can be.
Like some, let's say, some fine-tuning task that would, I don't know, like examples of truth and not truth, like lie, and the model would be penalized for the telling lies and something like that. So if
Really no. So you could probably get it to memorize specific facts which you deem as true or not, such as okay, vaccines don't cause autism true, vaccines cause autism false. So yes, you could memorize that just because models can memorize this. But generally, to judge what is true or not, I mean that's our job as researchers, and we fail all the time.
Yeah, but like the point is usually the generalization, right? So if like if there is some kind of research that was like focusing on this, like generalization of this predicting truth versus like there might be some patterns maybe. So yeah.
Right. Well, I would say that generally the business of generalization to unseen truths is science, and what we are doing as scientists. And yes, we are relying on patterns that we see, but like you know how difficult it is and how high uncertainty this is. I'd say the chances of succeeding in that are less than the chances of modeling the distribution of all the human written news ever.
Another suggestion, whether you have talked, or I think that we should we should learn from people who study how humans handle trust and find trust for themselves. So what is the psychology behind every single of us? Like when we're seeing conflicting facts, and how do we assemble that, and how do we internally build our whatever, like database of trusted things, and mimic that in the models. So because yes, as you said, it's also we ourselves are just exploring the world, and we are getting the best tools that we can at schools, and we are co-developing these tools so that others have again better like zooming glasses and things like that, so that we find how things are in the real world. So the brain then assembles that, and maybe this is something that the models would benefit from best. So again, a set of new types of people that we should talk to and get knowledge from. And a related fact that I've like fun fact that I've seen just a few days ago, it was a picture of a cola can on some background, and it was very dotted picture, so it was not clear. It was black and white, and everybody could see clear red in the part where the cola can is. So there was no red in the picture. So there was like, there is no seeing, there is only seeing as. So as soon as the brain recognized the cola can, it added the red part there. So there is a very like complex pipeline of like deception within the brain and like playing down that deception. So this is what we need to mimic in the models, I think.
Well, I'm sure there are some processes that humans have that maybe we could try to incorporate better. There are also processes by which humans decide that something is trustworthy, which we definitely should not replicate. So one case that we have as humans for finding the trust is just social. Whatever is popular, whatever is repeated by a lot of people must be true. Whatever the famous lab has just posted must be the best research. Even as scientists, we're guilty of that, and we definitely should not replicate that. But generally, the process of making this very complex web of inferences, I don't know if we can improve on that, but definitely the current models are not there.
Okay, so once again, thank you very much for the talk. We will have to finish now. Thank you for the discussion, for the questions, and hope to see you again at some point. So thank you very much.
I would be very happy to come back. Thank you.